Alvin Fitzgerald stepped into the estate, holding a bouquet of red roses meant to mend his broken heart, but the moment his eyes met Raquel's, everything he'd hoped for shattered. She wasn't the woman he remembered. In the cold, indifferent gaze of the Korean Mafia boss beside her, Alvin realized the woman he loved was gone, and he was never going to get her back. In the world of psychology, there is a concept known as trauma bonding, a paradoxical attachment where a victim develops a deep, misplaced sense of loyalty to their tormentor. It is a chemical cage, reinforced by intermittent reinforcement, and today, Alvin was about to walk right into its epicenter. He believed he was the hero coming to rescue his wife. He didn't realize he was just a ghost haunting a woman who had already moved on to a much more dangerous afterlife. Alvin Fitzgerald's heart raced as he stood there, bouquet in hand, caught between the ghost of his past and the chilling reality before him. Was he truly about to rescue Raquel, or was he just walking into a trap? Before we see what happened when the door finally opened, you need to understand the man standing on the porch. If you've ever felt the hollow ache of a life stolen from you, hit the like button. This isn't just a story about a marriage, it's a manual on how to spot the shadows before they swallow you whole. The thorns bit into Alvin's palm through the cheap cellophane wrapping. He didn't notice. The pain was a whisper compared to the roar in his chest, that hollow, scraping sensation that comes when you're about to beg someone to love you again. The estate loomed before him, all marble columns and iron gates that probably cost more than his entire neighborhood. Somewhere inside, a fountain trickled. Peaceful. Mocking. He shifted his weight. The roses trembled. Most men in Alvin Fitzgerald's position would have turned around. Most men would have recognized the signs, the unanswered calls that turned into blocked numbers, the divorce papers signed without a word, the complete radio silence for 8 months. But Alvin wasn't most men. He was a man who believed in second chances the way drowning men believe in driftwood. Let me tell you something about the psychology of denial. The human brain has this magnificent capacity for self-deception, particularly when faced with unbearable truths. It's called cognitive dissonance, and it works like this. When reality contradicts what we desperately need to believe, our minds perform Olympic-level mental gymnastics to reconcile the two. Alvin's brain had been doing backflips for months. The gate buzzed. His thumb had found the intercom without permission from his rational mind. Yes! The voice was male, accented, utterly disinterested. I'm here to see Raquel. Raquel Shanklin. I'm her husband. Am. The words tangled in his throat like fishing line. Static. Then, wait. Alvin waited. The roses were premium, he'd made sure of that. $47 he didn't have, charged to a credit card that was already wheezing under the weight of his mistakes. Red roses, because that's what you brought when you were sorry. When you wanted to come home. When you refused to accept that home had been demolished and someone else had built a fortress on the ruins. The gate clicked open. His legs moved. 1 foot. Another. The driveway was longer than it had any right to be, lined with sculptured hedges that probably had names in Latin. His reflection caught in a window as he passed, a man in a jacket that had seen better decades, holding flowers like a weapon he didn't know how to use. The front door opened before he could knock. The man who stood there made Alvin's stomach drop like an anchor through ice. Tall. Korean. Suit that cost more than Alvin's car. And tattoos. Intricate, calligraphic ink that crawled up his neck like smoke, disappearing under a collar so crisp it could cut. His eyes were flat. Professional. The kind of eyes that had seen things Alvin couldn't imagine and decided they were boring. Seo Young Jaiwon, the man said, not offering his hand. You are Alvin Fitzgerald. I need to see Raquel. Please. Just 5 minutes. Seoyoung's gaze dropped to the roses, then back to Alvin's face. Something that might have been pity flickered there. Might have been amusement. Wait here. The door didn't close. It simply held. Seoyoung disappeared into the marble cathedral of a foyer, his footsteps swallowed by wealth Alvin would never understand. Somewhere deeper in the house, voices murmured. A woman's laugh, light, careless, completely unfamiliar. Alvin's grip on the roses tightened. The thorns went deeper. Here's what you need to understand about power dynamics in relationships. They're rarely about love. Real power comes from leverage, who needs whom more. Alvin had walked into this estate carrying his entire heart in a bouquet of gas station flowers. He had no leverage. He had nothing but hope, and hope is the cruelest currency in the human economy. The voices grew closer. And then she appeared. Raquel Shanklin had always been beautiful, the kind of beautiful that made Alvin forget how to breathe properly, even after 7 years of marriage. Dark skin that caught light like silk. Curls that framed her face in a halo of defiance. Eyes that used to look at him like he was the answer to questions she hadn't asked yet. Those eyes were different now. She wore a dress that probably cost more than his rent. Emerald green. Sleeveless. Her shoulders were bare, and on her collarbone right there, visible, deliberate, was a mark. Purple red. Recent. The kind of mark that told stories Alvin didn't want to hear. Behind her, a man emerged from the shadows like smoke taking form. Haejin Junsik. Alvin had done his research, obsessive, desperate Google searches at 3 in the morning, Reddit threads, news articles written in careful euphemisms. Business mogul. Import-export. Community leader. The internet spoke in code, but Alvin could read between the lines. This was a man who owned things. People. Territories. Entire sections of the city that pretended he didn't exist while paying him tribute. He was 40-something, dressed in black on black that made him look like a knife wrapped in silk. His hair was pulled back, severe, revealing a face that was handsome in the way a loaded gun is handsome, beautiful, functional, absolutely lethal. And his hand rested on Raquel's lower back with the casual ownership of a man who had never been told no. Alvin, Raquel said. Her voice was soft. Careful. The way you'd talk to a stranger. What are you doing here? The roses suddenly felt ridiculous. Childish. A prop in a play where everyone knew their lines except him. I came to talk, Alvin managed. Just talk. Please, Raquel. I know things ended badly, but I've changed. I've been going to therapy. I got a new job. He thrust the roses forward like a shield. I miss you. I miss us. Haejin's expression didn't change. He simply watched, the way a cat watches a mouse tire itself out. Raquel's eyes flickered to the flowers. For a moment, just a breath, something crossed her face. Memory, maybe? Regret. Then it hardened into something worse, pity. Alvin, she said again, and the softness in her voice was a scalpel. You should go. No. The word came out strangled. No, I drove 4 hours. I just need you to listen. Whatever he's told you, whatever he's done. What I've done. Haejin spoke for the first time, and his voice was silk over iron. His accent shaped the words precisely, each syllable a small blade. I have given Raquel a life. Stability. Respect. Things, I understand, you could not provide. The truth of it hit Alvin like a fist. Because Haejin was right. Alvin had been a good husband in theory, faithful, present, trying. But trying doesn't pay bills. Trying doesn't erase the nights Raquel cried over eviction notices while Alvin promised things would get better. Trying doesn't compete with a man who could buy entire buildings the way Alvin bought lottery tickets. Raquel, Alvin whispered. Please, just look at me. She did. And in her eyes, Alvin saw the answer he'd traveled 4 hours to avoid. She wasn't trapped. She wasn't brainwashed. She wasn't waiting for him to save her. She had chosen this. Chosen him. Chosen a life Alvin couldn't comprehend, let alone provide. The roses dropped from his hand, petals scattering across marble like blood. Alvin didn't remember leaving the estate. One moment he was staring at Raquel's impassive face. The next he was sitting in his car 3 blocks away, hands shaking so badly he couldn't get the key in the ignition. The steering wheel was cracked leather under his palms. the smell of fast food wrappers and desperation. He sat there for 20 minutes. Maybe 30. Time moved like syrup. His phone buzzed. A text from his roommate. Rent's due tomorrow. You good? He wasn't good. He was the opposite of good. He was a man who'd just discovered that the foundation of his entire identity, loving husband, future father, good man who'd made temporary mistakes, was built on sand. No, worse than sand. Built on nothing at all. Let me explain something about the human need for narrative coherence. We are storytelling animals. Our brains are hardwired to create narratives that make sense, that give our suffering meaning. Alvin had spent 8 months crafting a story. Raquel left because she was hurt. Because he'd been neglectful during his unemployment. Because she needed space to heal. In this story, there was a path back. Apologies. Growth. Reconciliation. He had just discovered his story was fiction. The real story was simpler, crueler. Raquel had traded up. Found a better deal. Moved on to a man who could give her the life Alvin's love alone never could. There was no path back because there was no back to return to. The door had closed. Locked. Welded shut. His phone rang. Unknown number. Against every instinct, he answered. Mr. Fitzgerald. The voice was familiar. Seo Young Jaiwin, the tattooed guard from the estate. I believe you left something. Alvin's heart lurched. What? Your dignity. Though I suspect you left that some time ago. A pause. I am calling as a courtesy. Do not return to this address. Do not contact Raquel. Do not make this complicated. She's my wife. She is Mr. Junseek's partner. Legally, I believe your marriage was dissolved 6 months ago. Emotionally, it ended long before that. Accept this, Mr. Fitzgerald. It will hurt less. The line went dead. Alvin sat in the silence, staring at the phone like it might explain itself. A courtesy call. From a mobster's assistant. Warning him off his own wife like he was a stalker, a pest, a problem to be managed. Was he? The thought sat in his stomach like spoiled meat. He'd assumed, God, the arrogance of it, that Raquel was a victim in need of rescue. That she couldn't possibly be with Haejin Junseek willingly. That his love, his history, his sheer determination meant something in the grand calculus of her happiness. But standing in that foyer, seeing the way she'd looked at Haejin, not with fear, but with something far worse, comfort. Belonging. The casual intimacy of a woman who knew exactly where she stood and liked the view. Alvin finally got the key in the ignition. The engine coughed to life, reluctant, mirroring his own existence. He drove. Not home. He couldn't face the apartment, the second bedroom they'd planned to turn into a nursery, the photos still on the wall because taking them down felt like admitting defeat. Instead, he drove to the place where logic went to die, his brother's house. Joe Fitzgerald lived in a split level in the suburbs with a wife who tolerated Alvin and 3 kids who called him Uncle Broke. The lawn was aggressively normal, trimmed, edged, a small sign that said welcome in cursive. Alvin's car looked like a war crime parked in the driveway. Joe opened the door before Alvin could knock. Took one look at his face. Sighed. She didn't take you back. She didn't even hesitate. Joe stepped aside. Kitchen. I'll get the bourbon. They sat at a table sticky with jelly residue from breakfast, 2 brothers separated by 5 years and a million choices. Joe poured 3 fingers each, didn't bother with ice. You want me to say I told you so? Joe asked. Did you? Multiple times. You didn't listen. He drank. What happened? Alvin told him. The estate. The roses. Haejin Junseek standing there like God's personal accountant, tallying Alvin's failures with every breath. Raquel's face, that careful, controlled indifference that was somehow worse than hatred. And you're surprised? Joe said when he finished. I'm destroyed. Those aren't mutually exclusive. Joe refilled both glasses. Look, I'm going to tell you something and you're going to hate me for it, but here it is, Raquel didn't betray you. She outgrew you. The words hit like a slap. You were 23 when you got married, Joe continued, merciless now. She was 25. You were both broke, both dreaming, both convinced love would be enough. It wasn't. Love is never enough. You need money, stability, a plan. She found someone who could give her those things. He's a criminal. He's rich. In America, those things are negotiable. Joe leaned back. You think she's brainwashed? Trapped? Brother, she's living in a mansion. Wearing dresses that cost more than your car. Probably hasn't worried about money in a year. You came at her with gas station roses and childhood memories. What did you think would happen? Alvin wanted to argue. Wanted to insist that their history meant something, that 7 years of marriage couldn't be erased by money and power and a man with cold eyes and colder hands. But Joe was right. And that was the poison that would kill him slowly. So what do I do? Alvin asked, and hated how small his voice sounded. Joe looked at him for a long moment. Then he drained his glass, set it down with a decisive crack. You let her go. Alvin did not let her go. For 3 weeks, he became the thing he'd always despised, the obsessive ex. The kind of man who creates spreadsheets of possibilities, timelines of hope, conspiracy theories built from breadcrumbs and desperation. He started following Raquel's digital footprint with the dedication of a forensic analyst. She'd blocked him on everything: Instagram, Facebook, even LinkedIn, which felt particularly cruel, but the internet is a porous place. Anonymous accounts. Mutual friends who hadn't picked sides. The digital exhaust of a life lived publicly. What he found made his stomach turn. Raquel wasn't hiding. She was flourishing. Photos at gallery openings, her arm linked through Hagen's. Candid shots at restaurants Alvin couldn't pronounce, let alone afford. A lifestyle blog feature titled New Beginnings, How I Found Myself After Loss, where she talked about reinvention, self-worth, and releasing relationships that no longer served my growth. She mentioned Alvin exactly once. My previous marriage taught me that love without respect is just pretty words. He read that line 47 times. Each one a fresh wound. But it was the comments that truly gutted him. Hundreds of women cheering her on, celebrating her glow up, calling her brave for leaving. Several mentioned they'd been in similar situations, married to good guys who just couldn't provide, who loved hard but earned soft. One comment stuck in Alvin's brain like a splinter. Girl, you traded in a bicycle for a Bentley. Living your best life. 300 likes. Alvin closed his laptop. Opened it. Closed it again. Let me explain something about the psychology of rejection, specifically, what it does to the male ego. There's a concept in behavioral psychology called intermittent reinforcement. It's the same mechanism that makes gambling addictive, that keeps people checking their phones every 30 seconds, that turns reasonable humans into desperate ones. Here's how it works. When a reward is given unpredictably, the brain becomes obsessed with figuring out the pattern, with earning the next hit of validation. Raquel had loved Alvin once, completely, wholly, in a way that made him feel chosen. That was the reward. Now it was gone, but his brain still remembered the high. It convinced him that if he could just find the right combination of words, the right gesture, the right version of himself, he could earn it back. He was a rat pressing a lever that would never dispense food again. His phone buzzed. Joe, checking in for the 4th time that week. You eating? Alvin wasn't eating. He was surviving on coffee and the kind of hope that turns your organs into strangers. Instead of responding, he did something stupid. He created a fake Instagram account. Generic username. No posts. Just enough legitimacy to browse without suspicion. And he followed Celia Contreras. He'd found her by accident, digging through the tags on one of Hagen's rare public photos. A woman with platinum blonde hair and the kind of calculated beauty that came from expensive professionals. She appeared in exactly 3 photos, always at the edge of the frame, always watching Hagen with eyes that promised complications. Her Instagram was a masterclass in strategic thirst. luxury brand partnerships, yacht photos, cryptic quotes about knowing your worth and never settling. And buried in her stories, archived but not deleted, a video from 2 months ago. Alvin almost missed it. The video was shaky, clearly taken drunk at some industry party. The camera panned across a crowd of beautiful, vapid people until it landed on a couple in the corner. Haejin Junsik and Celia. They weren't kissing. They weren't even touching. But the space between them crackled with a kind of tension that needed no translation. Celia said something. Haejin smiled, actually smiled, an expression Alvin had never seen on his face. She leaned in, whispered in his ear. The video ended. But the caption was still there. Some men are disasters waiting to happen. I've always liked storms. Alvin's heart started to race. Because suddenly, impossibly, he had leverage. At 2:47 a.m. on a Thursday, Alvin made a decision that would either save him or destroy what was left of his soul. He would tell Raquel about Celia. The logic was flawless in the dark. If Raquel knew that Haejin was involved with another woman, the illusion would shatter. She'd see him for what he truly was, not a savior, not a provider, but just another man who took what he wanted and discarded loyalty like used tissues. She'd leave him. And when she did, Alvin would be there. Ready. Redeemed. It was perfect. It was delusional. But Alvin was beyond caring about the distinction. He spent the next 2 days gathering evidence. Not just Celia's Instagram story, but everything. He reverse image searched her photos, found her tagged at events with Haejin dating back 7 months, overlapping with when Raquel had just moved into the estate. He found a Society page article mentioning prominent businessman Haejin Junsik and his companion for the evening, socialite Celia Contreras, at a fundraiser. 3 weeks after Raquel's divorce was finalized, Alvin compiled it all into a folder. Screenshots, dates, locations. He even cross-referenced Haejin's public appearances with gaps in his time with Raquel, building a circumstantial case that would make a prosecutor weep with pride. Then he sat back and looked at what he created. A betrayal dossier. A weapon. The kind of thing that could blow up a relationship and leave shrapnel in everyone involved. His phone rang. Joe again. This time, Alvin answered. I know what you're thinking, Joe said without preamble. Whatever it is, don't. You don't know. You've been radio silent for 48 hours. You're either dead, drunk, or planning something catastrophically stupid. Since you answered, I'm betting on option 3. Alvin said nothing. Joe sighed, the sound of a man who'd had this conversation in different forms their entire lives. What's the play, Alvin? You going to send her proof that her new man is sleeping around? You think she'll come crying back to you? If she knows the truth. She already knows. Joe's voice went hard. You think a woman like Raquel, smart as she is, doesn't know exactly what kind of man Haejin Junsik is? She chose him anyway. Not despite his flaws. Because of what he can provide that you can't. That's not love. No. It's survival. It's pragmatism. It's a woman in her 30s who looked at her life and made a calculation. A pause. You want to know what'll happen if you send her that information? She'll show it to Haejin. They'll have a conversation. Maybe a fight. Maybe she'll demand some concession, more time, more money, more commitment. And then they'll get past it. Together. Without you. The truth of it settled in Alvin's chest like cement. And if she doesn't leave him, Joe continued, merciless, then what? You've accomplished nothing except proving you're exactly who she left. A man so stuck in the past he'll sabotage her future just to feel relevant. Alvin looked at the folder on his screen. All those hours. All that proof. All of it meaningless. Let her go, Joe said, each word a nail in a coffin Alvin had been building for himself. This isn't love anymore, brother. It's grief wearing a disguise. And the only person you're hurting is yourself. The line went quiet. Alvin could hear his brother breathing, waiting. I can't, Alvin whispered. Then you're already dead. You just haven't stopped moving yet. Joe hung up. Alvin sat in the blue glow of his laptop, staring at the evidence he'd gathered with the intensity of a broken man searching for patterns in static. His cursor hovered over the delete button. He didn't press it. Instead, he opened a new tab and searched for Celia Contreras's contact information. It took 3 hours and a people finder website that charged him $19 he didn't have, but he found it. A phone number, an email, a business address for her consulting firm, which was clearly a front for something, though Alvin didn't care enough to investigate further. He drafted an email. Ms. Contreras, you don't know me, but we have someone in common. I think it's time we talked. His finger trembled over the send button. This was it. The point of no return. The moment where he transformed from grieving ex-husband into active saboteur. If he sent this email, he was declaring war on people who fought wars for a living. But maybe that was the point. Maybe he'd been dead since the moment Raquel walked out. Maybe this desperate, stupid, doomed plan was the first time he'd felt alive in months. He clicked send. The email whooshed away into the digital void. And Alvin Fitzgerald, for the first time since standing on that estate's porch with roses in his hand, smiled. It wasn't a happy smile, but it was something. Celia Contreras responded in 43 minutes. Coffee. Tomorrow. 2 p.m. Address attached. Come alone. The address was for a cafe in the Arts District, the kind of place that served lattes in handleless mugs and charged $7 for the privilege of sitting on uncomfortable furniture. Alvin arrived 15 minutes early, ordered black coffee because it was the only thing under $3, and found a corner table where he could watch the door. She walked in at 2:03 p.m. Photos didn't do her justice, and that wasn't a compliment. In person, Celia Contreras radiated the kind of calculated perfection that made you aware of your own flaws. Platinum hair in waves that looked effortless, but probably took hours. Skin like porcelain. A dress that was simultaneously modest and devastating. Every man in the cafe looked up. Every woman looked away. She spotted Alvin immediately. He was the only person who looked like he was about to throw up, and walked over with the predatory grace of someone who'd never been told no. Alvin Fitzgerald, she said, sliding into the chair across from him. Not a question. You look exactly like your Facebook profile. Except sadder. You looked at my Facebook? I look at everyone's everything. She ordered a matcha latte from a passing waiter without breaking eye contact. So, you wanted to talk about Heijin. The name landed between them like a blade. How did you? Please. She waved a hand, dismissive. You're Raquel's ex-husband. You've been cyber-stalking her for weeks. Yes, I know about the fake Instagram account. It's painfully obvious, and you found my connection to Heijin. Now you think you've found leverage. Am I warm? Alvin's throat felt like sandpaper. Are you sleeping with him? Celia's smile was a work of art. Define sleeping. Are you involved with Heijin Jonsik while he's with Raquel? Involved is such a broad term. Her matcha arrived. She took a sip, savored it, made Alvin wait. But yes, we have an understanding. The casual admission hit harder than Alvin expected. He'd built this moment up in his head, imagined confrontation, denial, maybe tears. He hadn't prepared for honesty delivered with the emotional weight of discussing the weather. Does Raquel know? Does Raquel know that powerful men have options? That monogamy is a fairy tale sold to the middle class? That her perfect new life comes with the same compromises as everyone else's? Celia set down her cup. I imagine she suspects. Whether she's chosen to confirm it is her business. That's pragmatic? Realistic? Welcome to how the world actually works, Alvin. She leaned forward, and her perfume, something expensive and vaguely threatening, washed over him. Let me guess your plan. You are going to expose Heijin's infidelity to Raquel. She'd be heartbroken. Leave him. Fall back into your arms. You'd ride off into the sunset, vindicated. Alvin said nothing, because that had been exactly the plan. Adorable, Celia said. Also, catastrophically stupid. Do you know what happens to people who create problems for Heijin Junsik? I'm not afraid. You should be. Her voice dropped, losing its playful edge. I've seen him end careers with a phone call. Relationships with a rumor. Once, I watched him destroy a man's entire family business because the guy's son accidentally scratched his car. Heijin doesn't get angry. He gets efficient. And you? She looked him up and down. You're not even a speed bump. The weight of it settled on Alvin like fog. He'd known, abstractly, that Haejin Junseek was dangerous. But knowing and understanding are different countries. Celia was offering him a passport to understanding, and the visa requirements were his ego. Then why are you here? Alvin asked. If I'm so irrelevant, why meet me? Celia's smile returned, sharper now. Because irrelevant people can still be useful. Tell me, Alvin, what do you want? Really? I want Raquel back. No, you don't. You want to not feel like a failure. There's a difference. She traced the rim of her cup. Raquel has moved on. Upgraded. She's not coming back to you any more than a butterfly returns to being a caterpillar. But... She let the word hang. But... Alvin leaned forward despite himself. But Haejin is also a problem for me. Right now, I'm the side piece. The entertaining distraction. Raquel has the title, the legitimacy, the public position. I get hotel rooms and the occasional charity gala where I'm introduced as a family friend. Her jaw tightened. I don't do second place. Understanding dawned, cold and clinical. You want me to help you get rid of Raquel. I want us to help each other. You want her away from Haejin. I want her anywhere else. Our goals align. She pulled out her phone, scrolled, turned it to show Alvin a photo. It was Raquel and Haejin at some formal event. She was laughing, radiant, her hand on his chest in casual intimacy that made Alvin's stomach clench. That was taken last week, Celia said. Notice anything? Alvin stared. Her necklace. Diamonds. 10 carats, custom designed. He gave it to her for their 6-month anniversary. Do you know what he gave me for our 1 year? Earrings. Nice ones, but earrings. She took the phone back. Haejin is falling for her. Actually falling. And that makes her dangerous to both of us. How is that? Because if he marries her, my position evaporates. And you? You become a permanent ghost, haunting the edges of a life you can never touch. Celia's eyes glittered. But if Raquel were to leave of her own accord, realize Haejin isn't who she thinks he is, then the board resets. He'd be hurt, vulnerable, available. And you think I can make that happen? No. I think we can make that happen. Together. She slid a business card across the table. Think about it. But don't think long. Haejin's planning something big for Raquel next month. After that, your window closes permanently. She stood, gathered her purse, and looked down at Alvin with something that might have been pity. You came here thinking you were the hero of the story, she said softly. But there are no heroes here. Just people trying to survive people who have more power than they know what to do with. The question is, are you ready to stop being a victim? She left. Alvin sat there, staring at the business card. It was matte black with silver lettering. Just a name and a number. The coffee grew cold in his hand. Outside, the city moved on, indifferent to the decisions being made in corner cafes by desperate men and calculating women. Alvin picked up the card. He should throw it away. Walk out. Listen to Joe. Let Raquel go and rebuild his life from the ashes of his marriage. He should. But here's the thing about drowning men. They don't judge what they grab onto. They just grab. Alvin put the card in his pocket. 3 days later, Alvin stood in Celia's apartment, a high-rise loft in the financial district with floor-to-ceiling windows that made the city look like a toy model of itself. Everything was white leather furniture, white marble countertops, white orchids in white vases. It felt like standing inside a skeleton. Celia was pouring wine. Something red that probably cost more than Alvin's monthly grocery budget. I wasn't sure you'd come, she said, handing him a glass. I wasn't sure either. Alvin took the wine but didn't drink. You said Haejin's planning something big for Raquel. What is it? Celia walked to the window, silhouetted against the city lights. He's buying her a gallery. An actual art gallery in Chelsea. Raquel mentioned once that she used to paint in college. Haejin's been quietly acquiring the space for 2 months. He's going to present her with the keys at his annual gala next month. In front of everyone who matters. The scale of it made Alvin dizzy. Not flowers. Not jewelry. An entire building. A dream made manifest. How do you compete with someone who can buy dreams? After that, Celia continued, she'll be locked in, publicly committed, his partner in every sense. And I'll be. She paused, vulnerability flashing across her perfect face. I'll be erased. So what's the plan? Celia turned, and in her eyes, Alvin saw something familiar, desperation wearing designer clothes. We make her see who he really is. Not the man who buys galleries, but the man who breaks people. We introduced doubt. Slowly, carefully, until she questions everything. How? Celia smiled. With the truth. Just, strategically deployed. She pulled out a tablet, brought up a series of documents. Financial records. Transfer receipts. Surveillance photos. A paper trail of Haejin Junsik's actual business, not the legal import-export facade, but the machinery underneath. Money laundering. Intimidation. Debts collected through methods that would never see a courtroom. Where did you get this? Alvin breathed. I've been sleeping with him for a year. Powerful men talk after sex. They don't think women listen. She scrolled through more documents. This is who Haejin really is. And Raquel, for all her pragmatism, still thinks she's with a legitimate businessman who operates in gray areas. She doesn't know about the dark. If we show her this, she'll warn him. No. Celia shook her head. We can't be that direct. Raquel's not stupid. If we come at her with accusations, she'll circle the wagons. We need her to discover it herself. To stumble onto truths that make her question everything. Alvin's mind raced. How? You ever hear of gaslighting in reverse? Celia set down the tablet. Instead of making someone doubt reality, you make them doubt the illusion they've built. Small cracks. Inconsistencies. Things that don't add up. She pulled up a calendar on her phone. In 2 weeks, Haejin has a meeting in Boston. Overnight trip. He always takes these meetings alone, no Seo Young, no security. It's one of the few times he's vulnerable. She looked at Alvin. What if Raquel received proof he wasn't in Boston at all? That he was, say, with another woman at a hotel here in the city. But if he's really in Boston, he will be. But photos can be misdated. Locations can be confused. With the right metadata, the right timestamps, we can create a narrative that's close enough to believable. Understanding clicked into place, and with it, a wave of nausea. You want to frame him for something he didn't do. I want to frame him for something he's already done, just not on that specific date. Think of it as narrative efficiency. Celia's voice was clinical. Haejin has been with me at that hotel 6 times this year. We're just repurposing evidence. That's effective. The word you're looking for is effective. She refilled her wine, unbothered. You want to play by rules, Alvin? Fine. Go home. Send Raquel a nice email wishing her well. Move on with your life. But if you want results, you need to accept that this isn't a fair fight. It never was. Alvin looked at the city below, all those lights, all those people making compromises and calling them choices. If we do this, he said slowly, and she finds out we manipulated her, she'll hate us. Both of us. Absolutely. Celia raised her glass. But she'll also be free of Haejin. And isn't that what you want? For her to be safe? Was it? Alvin wasn't sure anymore. The lines between rescue and revenge had blurred somewhere in the last few weeks. Did he want Raquel back because he loved her, or because losing her meant admitting he'd failed? Did he want her safe, or did he just want to win? I need to think about this, Alvin said. Celia nodded, unsurprised. You have 48 hours. After that, I move forward without you. And Alvin? She walked him to the door. Whatever you decide, understand this. You're already complicit. You sought me out. You listened to my plan. You drank wine in my apartment while we discussed destroying Raquel's relationship. You don't get to pretend you're innocent anymore. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Alvin stood in the hallway, his reflection caught in the polished elevator doors. He looked like a stranger. Or maybe he looked like himself for the first time in months, a man capable of moral compromise, of calculated cruelty, of all the things he'd thought he was too good for. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. The hotel photos. Proof of concept. Delete after viewing. A file loaded. Photos of Haejin and Celia in a hotel lobby, walking toward elevators, entering a room. The timestamps were clear, dates from 3 months ago. But Celia was right. With the right editing software, those dates could be changed. The truth could be bent until it served a different narrative. Alvin deleted the message. But he'd already seen enough. The human mind is a fascinating instrument of self-deception. We talk about morality like it's a fixed star, but in reality, it's more like a dimmer switch. You don't wake up one day and decide to become the villain. You take small steps. Justifications. Micro-compromises that each seem reasonable in isolation. Alvin took his first step on a Tuesday. He texted Celia, "I'm in." Her response was immediate, "Good. Phase 1 starts tomorrow." Phase 1 was information gathering. Specifically, getting close enough to Raquel's life to plant seeds of doubt without revealing himself. The problem, Raquel had blocked him everywhere, and showing up at the estate would likely result in Seo-young breaking his kneecaps. The solution, according to Celia, was elegant. Raquel still talks to her college roommate, Simone, Celia explained over burner phones. She'd insisted they use disposables for all communication. They have brunch every other Sunday at a cafe in Midtown. You're going to accidentally run into them. She'll recognize me. She won't be there. Just Simone. You're going to befriend her. Casual. Charm her. Make yourself seem like the sympathetic ex who's moved on with grace. To what end? To establish yourself as a source of concern. Someone who cares about Raquel's well-being, not her relationship. When the time comes to plant doubts, Simone will be the conduit. It was manipulation 3 layers deep, and it made Alvin sick. He did it anyway. Sunday arrived cold and gray. Alvin positioned himself at the cafe 30 minutes early, laptop open, looking like every other freelancer who'd colonized coffee shops as offices. He'd rehearsed this. Casual glances. A recognition. A polite hello. Nothing aggressive. Simone walked in at 10:47 a.m. She looked exactly like her Instagram, natural hair and a twist-out, bright lipstick, the kind of woman who radiated confidence and kept her circle small. She ordered, scanned for seats, and her eyes landed on Alvin. Paused. Recognized. Alvin waved, tentative. Friendly. The kind of wave that said, "I know this might be awkward, but I'm a mature adult." Simone walked over. "Alvin?" "Simone." "Hey." He stood, gestured to the empty chair. "Raquel's not coming?" "She canceled last minute." Some gallery thing with Simone stopped, uncomfortable. "With her partner." The word landed like a stone. Partner. Not boyfriend. Not husband. Partner. The sanitized language of people trying not to cause pain. "It's okay," Alvin said, injecting just the right amount of weariness into his voice. "I know about Haejin. I'm dealing with it." Simone studied him, cautious. "You look better than I expected." "Therapy helps. So does accepting reality." He offered a self-deprecating smile. "I made a lot of mistakes in our marriage. I'm trying to learn from them instead of drowning in them." This was the script Celia had helped him craft, contrite, self-aware, evolved. A man who'd done the work. It was also complete fiction. But Simone's shoulders relaxed. "Can I buy you a coffee?" Alvin asked. "As an apology for all the times I monopolized Raquel and made her cancel on you?" A small smile. "You did do that a lot." "I did. I'm sorry." They talked for 40 minutes. Surface stuff, mostly jobs, the city, the weather. Alvin let Simone lead, only steering the conversation back to Raquel twice, and both times with the careful concern of someone who'd moved on but still cared. "She seems happy," Alvin said at one point. "In her photos, I mean. I still check sometimes." "Probably shouldn't." "She is," Simone said carefully. "It's different than with you. More stable, I guess." "Good." That's good. She deserves stability. A pause, calculated. Though I worry sometimes. The business Hagen's in, is it safe? Simone's expression flickered. What do you mean? Nothing specific. Just. Alvin shrugged. Import-export can be complicated. I knew a guy in logistics once. The gray areas can get dark quickly. I'm sure Hagen's legitimate. He stopped, shook his head. Sorry. Not my business anymore. The seed was planted. Not an accusation. Just a question mark. A shadow of concern from an ex-husband who'd grown up enough to want Raquel's safety even if he couldn't have her love. They parted with a hug, an exchange of numbers, a promise to maybe do this again sometime. Alvin reported back to Celia via text, phase 1 complete. Her response, perfect. Now we wait. Waiting was the hardest part. Over the next week, Alvin went about his life, work, therapy, which he'd actually started attending, gym sessions to burn off the anxiety. But underneath the routine, his mind spun constantly. Had Simone mentioned their conversation to Raquel? Had Raquel dismissed it? Was the seed dying before it could sprout? On Thursday, his burner phone buzzed. Coffee. Now. Our usual. Celia was already at a table when he arrived, 2 espressos waiting. Simone talked to Raquel, she said without preamble. How do you know? Because Raquel called me this morning. Alvin nearly dropped his cup. She knows about us? Relax. We've met at a few of Hagen's events. As far as she knows, I'm just another socialite in his orbit. She called to ask if I knew anything about Hagen's business practices. Celia's smile was sharp. Your little seed is sprouting. What did you tell her? That I honestly don't know much about his work, which is technically true, but that he's always been generous and kind to me. Which is also technically true in certain contexts. She sipped her espresso. I also mentioned, very casually, that he's extremely private about his professional life. Almost secretive. And that I'd noticed he takes certain calls in other rooms, away from everyone. You're making her paranoid. I'm making her observant. There's a difference. Celia pulled out her phone. And now we move to phase 2. The Boston trip is in 4 days. I've prepared the doctored evidence, photos, hotel receipts, timestamps adjusted. All we need is someone to deliver it. We can't just send it to her. We're not. We're going to leave it somewhere she'll find it by accident. Her car. A jacket pocket. Somewhere plausible. Celia's eyes glittered. Hagen's meticulous, but everyone makes mistakes. We're just creating one for him. Alvin's stomach churned. This was the point of no return. Casual conversations with Simone were one thing. Actively planting false evidence was something else entirely. She'll investigate, Alvin said. Raquel's smart. She'll check the dates, verify. And she'll find receipts that match, because I've been to that hotel with Hagen 6 times this year. The photos are real. The dates are the only fiction. Celia leaned forward. And here's the beautiful part. Even when Hagen proves he was in Boston, the doubt remains. Because the question becomes, if not this time, then when? How many other times has he lied? It was brilliant. It was monstrous. It was happening whether Alvin wanted it to or not. For days, Celia said, standing. Get ready. Because after this, there's no going back. She left him there, alone with his espresso and his rapidly shrinking soul. That night, Alvin dreamed of roses. Red petals falling like rain, covering everything, drowning him in the smell of apologies no one wanted to hear. He woke at 3 a.m., sweating. His phone showed a missed call from Joe. A voicemail. Hey. Haven't heard from you in a while. Just wanted to make sure you're okay. Call me back. Alvin stared at the phone. If he called Joe, he'd have to lie. Or confess. And confession meant judgment, meant being talked out of this, meant returning to the emptiness of his apartment and the slow death of moving on. He didn't call back. Instead, he opened his laptop and looked at photos of Raquel. Not the new ones, the glossy Instagram versions. The old ones. Their wedding. A vacation in Maine. Her asleep on his shoulder during a movie. He'd loved her. God, he loved her so much it made his chest ache. But what he was doing now, was this love? Or was it just the death rattle of his ego, dressed up in nobility? Alvin closed the laptop. In 4 days, Raquel's world would start to crack. And Alvin Fitzgerald, for better or worse, would be the one holding the hammer. The morning of Hagen's Boston trip arrived with unseasonable warmth, the kind of weather that feels like a trick. Alvin sat in his car 2 blocks from the estate, hands gripping the steering wheel, envelope on the passenger seat. Inside the envelope, 3 printed photos of Hagen and Celia at the Waldorf, timestamps showing 2 days from now during his supposed Boston meeting. Hotel receipts. Metadata doctored but convincing. A narrative gift wrapped in evidence. The plan was simple. Celia had bribed one of the estate's cleaning staff, a woman named Maria who needed money for her daughter's medical bills and didn't ask questions. Maria would plant the envelope in Raquel's car, tucked under the driver's seat. Raquel would find it later, seemingly by chance. A mystery. A question with devastating answers. Alvin's phone buzzed. Maria is in position. You need to deliver the package now. Service entrance. Blue door. Knock twice. This was it. Alvin picked up the envelope. It felt heavier than paper should. He drove to the service entrance, knocked twice. Maria opened immediately, a woman in her 50s with tired eyes and the kind of face that had seen too much and stopped judging. You're Alvin. He nodded. She took the envelope without looking inside. I don't want to know what this is. I don't want to know. She met his eyes. But I have one question. Is this going to hurt Ms. Raquel? The directness of it caught Alvin off guard. I'm trying to help her, he said. That's not what I asked. They stood in the doorway, the envelope between them like a confession. Yes, Alvin finally said. It's going to hurt her. But it's the truth. Maria's jaw tightened. The truth and help aren't always the same thing, Mijo. She tucked the envelope into her apron. I'll do this because I need the money. But you should know Ms. Raquel, she's kind to me. Remembers my daughter's name. Gave me a bonus last Christmas without being asked. She's a good person. I know. Do you? Maria shook her head. Because good people don't deserve to have their lives blown up by ghosts who can't let go. She closed the door. Alvin stood there, Maria's words echoing in his skull. He wanted to call it back, to bang on the door and demand the envelope's return. He wanted to. His phone buzzed. Done. Package delivered. Go home, Alvin. It's out of our hands now. Except it wasn't out of his hands. He'd put it in motion. He was the architect of this particular disaster. Alvin drove home in silence, the radio off, the city passing by in a blur of decisions he couldn't unmake. 26 hours later, the text came from Celia. She found it. Then, all hell is breaking loose. Alvin's hands started shaking. What happened? Raquel confronted Hagen over the phone. He's flying back early. Emergency damage control. I'm hearing shouting through the walls. This is working. Working. The word sat in Alvin's stomach like poison. This was what he wanted, wasn't it? Raquel questioning Hagen. The perfect facade cracking. Doubt seeping into the foundation of her new life. So why did he feel like he was going to vomit? His phone rang. Unknown number. Hello, Mr. Fitzgerald. The voice was familiar, cold. Seo Young Jaiwin. We need to talk. Alvin's blood froze. How did you? I'm texting you an address. Be there in 1 hour. Come alone. If you value your health, you will not ignore this invitation. The line went dead. A text arrived, an address in an industrial area by the docks. The kind of place where screams got swallowed by fog and shipping containers. Alvin sat there, mind racing. They knew. Somehow, they knew he was involved. Hagen had probably already proven he was in Boston, flight records, hotel check-ins, credit card receipts. The manufactured evidence had fallen apart under scrutiny. And now they wanted to talk. Alvin should run. Leave the city. Disappear. Instead, he grabbed his keys and drove to the docks. Because part of him, the part that had been drowning since Raquel left, wanted this to end. One way or another. The warehouse was exactly as threatening as expected. Concrete. Shadows. The smell of salt water and rust. A single light illuminated a chair in the center of the space. Seo-young Jaiwan stood beside it, impeccable in a suit that seemed to generate its own gravity. "Sit," he said. Alvin sat. "You are either very brave or very stupid," Seo-young continued, circling slowly. "I haven't decided which." "I didn't. Please do not insult me with lies. We know you've been working with Ms. Contreras. We know about the photos, the manufactured evidence, the attempt to drive a wedge between Mr. Junseek and Ms. Shanklin." Seo-young stopped in front of Alvin. "What I don't know is why you thought this would work." Alvin said nothing. What was there to say? "Mr. Junseek is many things," Seo-young said. "But he is not careless. He has flight records. Timestamps from his phone. Security footage from the Boston hotel showing him in meetings. Your little scheme lasted exactly 4 hours before collapsing. Then why am I here? Because Ms. Shanklin is currently sitting in the estate, crying, wondering if the man she's built a life with has been unfaithful. Because even though your evidence is fake, the doubt is real. And doubt, Mr. Fitzgerald, is a poison that outlasts facts. Understanding settled like frost. He wants me to fix it. He wants you to confess. To tell Ms. Shanklin that you fabricated evidence out of jealousy and desperation. That none of it was real. That Haejin has been faithful, devoted, everything you could never be. The cruelty of it was almost beautiful. Haejin was going to use Alvin's sabotage as proof of his own virtue. The jealous ex who couldn't let go, making up lies while the noble new partner remained falsely accused. And if I refuse? Seo-young smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Then we discuss your future in less comfortable settings. Mr. Junseek is a patient man, but you've attacked something he values. Patience has limits. Alvin looked at the chair he was sitting in, the warehouse around him, the choice that wasn't really a choice. When? Tomorrow. 2 p.m. The estate. You will tell her everything. And then you will leave the city and never contact Ms. Shanklin again. Are we understood? Yes. Seo-young nodded. Good. You may go. Alvin stood on shaking legs, walked to the door. Mr. Fitzgerald? Seo-young's voice stopped him. For what it's worth, I understand why you did this. Love makes us stupid. But next time you plan to wage war, make sure you're equipped for it. You brought a bouquet to a battlefield. The outcome was never in doubt. Alvin drove home in a daze. Called Celia from the burner phone. They know, he said when she answered. A pause. I'm aware. Haejin called me an hour ago. Very calmly explained that if I continue to cause problems, I'll find my entire social circle evaporated by morning. Her voice was brittle. We underestimated him. He wants me to confess to Raquel tomorrow. Tell her I made it all up. Are you going to? Alvin looked at his reflection in the rearview mirror. A man who'd compromised every principle he thought he had, who'd partnered with his enemy's mistress, who'd manufactured evidence to destroy a woman's happiness. All for what? A relationship that was already dead? An ego that couldn't accept rejection? Yes, he said. I'm going to confess. Then it's over. We lost. Yeah, we did. He hung up, threw the burner phone out the window into a storm drain, and sat there in the dark, waiting for tomorrow to arrive and finish killing whatever was left of Alvin. Fitzgerald's soul. The estate looked different in daylight. Less imposing. More like what it was, an expensive house where expensive people made expensive mistakes. Alvin was escorted in by Seo-young, who maintained his professional distance while radiating the promise of violence should Alvin deviate from the script. Raquel was in the sunroom. She looked smaller than Alvin remembered. Curled in a white chair, makeup gone, eyes red from crying. The emerald dress had been replaced by a simple sweater. She looked, for the first time since he'd seen her at the door with Haejin, like the woman he'd married. It broke something in his chest. Raquel, he said. She looked up, and the exhaustion in her face was devastating. Alvin. Seo-young said you wanted to talk to me. Not the truth. Already, Haejin was rewriting the narrative. This was Alvin's idea. His confession. His choice. I did. I need to tell you something. She waited. Alvin sat down across from her, acutely aware of Seo-young standing by the door, of Haejin somewhere in this house listening. The photos you found, Alvin began. The evidence that Hagen was with someone else during his Boston trip. It was fake. I faked it. Raquel's eyes widened. I couldn't accept that you'd moved on, Alvin continued, the words tasting like ash. I thought if I could make you doubt him, you'd leave. Come back to me. So I worked with someone to create evidence. Doctored photos. False receipts. I planted them in your car. The silence that followed was absolute. You. Raquel's voice was barely a whisper. You fabricated evidence to destroy my relationship. Yes. You violated my privacy, manipulated my trust, tried to sabotage my happiness. Because you couldn't let go? Every word was a knife, and Alvin deserved every cut. Yes. Raquel stood. And the transformation was remarkable. The exhaustion burned away, replaced by something cold and final. Get out. Raquel. Get out. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't have to. You have exactly 60 seconds to leave this house before I call the police and report you for harassment, trespassing, and whatever else my lawyers can invent. Do you understand me? Alvin stood. I'm sorry. No, you're not. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry it didn't work. But you're not sorry for what you did. She stepped closer, and Alvin could see the woman she'd become, harder, clearer, done with mercy. I left you because you were weak. Because you made promises you couldn't keep and expected love to pay the bills. I didn't leave you for Hagen. I left you for me. And every single thing you've done since has proven I made the right choice. The words hit like bullets. I loved you, Alvin whispered. No. You loved the idea of me. The version that needed you. But I don't need you, Alvin. I never did. I just didn't realize it until I was gone. She turned to Seo Young. Get him out. And if he comes back, handle it however Mr. Junsik sees fit. Seo Young's hand closed on Alvin's shoulder like a vice. Wait, Alvin said, desperation flooding in. Raquel, please just listen. I'm done listening. I'm done with you. Whatever we were, it's dead. And you need to bury it before it poisons whatever's left of your life. She walked away. Didn't look back. Seo Young escorted Alvin to the door, down the driveway, to the gate. If I see you within a mile of this property again, Seo Young said conversationally, I will break your hands. Both of them. Slowly. Are we clear? Alvin nodded. The gate closed behind him with a decisive clang. And, just like that, it was over. Alvin sat in his car outside the estate, engine running, going nowhere. His phone buzzed. Joe called you 4 times. Where are you? He should call back. Confess what he'd done. Accept the judgment and the pity and the inevitable I told you so. But he couldn't face it. Couldn't face the reality of what he'd become, a man so desperate to matter that he destroyed the last shred of dignity he had left. Instead, he drove. Not home. Not to Joe. Just drove, the city blurring past, until he found himself at the cemetery where his father was buried. He hadn't been here in 3 years. The grave was simple. A flat stone. Name and dates. Nothing poetic. Alvin sat on the grass beside it, knees pulled to his chest like a child. I fucked up, Dad, he said to the stone. I really fucked up. The stone, predictably, said nothing. She's gone. And it's my fault. Not because I lost her the first time, that was just life. But because I couldn't let her go. Because I turned into the exact kind of pathetic I always swore I'd never be. A breeze moved through the cemetery, carrying the smell of cut grass and rain. You used to say that love isn't about holding on. It's about knowing when to open your hands. I never understood that until right now. Alvin leaned back, staring at the sky. I think I need to disappear for a while. Figure out who I am without her. Without the story I've been telling myself. He sat there until the sun started to set, painting the sky in colors that hurt to look at. Then he stood, brushed off his pants, and walked back to his car. Raquel was right. He needed to bury this before it poisoned him completely. The question was there anything left to save? 6 months later. Alvin Fitzgerald sat in a small apartment in Portland, Oregon, watching rain streak down the window. The place wasn't much, one bedroom, a kitchen that doubled as a dining room, a view of another building. But it was his. Paid for by a job he'd found doing data entry for a logistics company. Boring work. Stable. The kind of life that didn't make for good stories. He'd left New York 3 days after the confession at the estate, packed what fit in his car, gave the rest to Goodwill, and drove west until he ran out of country. Joe had called it running away. Alvin called it survival. The therapy here was cheaper. The therapist, Dr. Yolanda Martinez, was a woman in her 60s who'd seen every flavor of human breakdown and met them all with the same calm confidence. "You're still thinking about her," she said during their last session. "Every day. Has it gotten easier?" Alvin considered. Different. Not easier. Just different. Like the pain changed shape. Dr. Martinez nodded. Grief does that. It doesn't disappear. It just becomes something you can carry without it carrying you. She was right. The obsession had faded. The desperate need to check Raquel's social media, to imagine scenarios where she came back, to draft emails he'd never send, all of it had slowly, painfully quieted. What remained was softer. Sadder. The ache of a life he'd wanted but couldn't build. His phone buzzed. A text from Joe. "Saw something. Thought you should know." An article from a New York Society blog. Power couple alert. Haejin Junseek and Raquel Shanklin announce engagement. There was a photo. Raquel in a white dress, radiant, holding Haejin's hand. A massive diamond on her finger catching light like a small star. Behind them, the art gallery, her gallery, the one Haejin had bought her, with a banner announcing its grand opening. She looked happy. Genuinely, undeniably happy. Alvin stared at the photo for a long time, waiting for the rage, the grief, the hollow ache that used to accompany any reminder of her. It came, but quieter now. Manageable. He texted Joe back, "Good for her." And meant it. Because here's the thing about love and letting go. You don't stop caring. You just stop making their happiness about your pain. Raquel had found a life that fit her. A partner who could provide things Alvin couldn't. A future built on pragmatism and power, and probably a dozen compromises Alvin would never understand. But it was her choice. And maybe, just maybe, respecting that choice was the last loving thing he could do. Alvin closed the article. Opened his laptop. He'd been writing lately. Nothing profound. Just stories. Fictionalized versions of his own disaster, rewritten with better endings. Characters who learned to let go before they destroyed themselves. Happy sad tales where justice came at the cost of dreams, but people survived anyway. Dr. Martinez said it was healthy. Processing trauma through narrative. Alvin thought it might be the only way he knew how to make sense of anything. He started typing. The thorns bit into his palm through the cheap cellophane wrapping. He didn't notice. The pain was a whisper compared to his own story. Rewritten. Examined. Made into something that might help someone else avoid the same mistakes. Outside, the rain continued. Portland was good for rain. Good for anonymity. Good for men who needed to become strangers to themselves before they could figure out who they actually were. His phone buzzed again. Another text from Joe. "Proud of you, brother." That response took growth. Alvin smiled. Typed back, "Getting there. One day at a time." Because that was the truth. He wasn't healed. He wasn't whole. He was just less broken. And some days, that was enough. 3,000 miles away, in an estate with marble columns and iron gates, Raquel Shanklin stood in her gallery, looking at a painting she'd completed that morning. It was abstract. Blues and grays. A storm over an ocean. Or maybe a heartbreaking. Art was subjective. "It's beautiful," Haejin said, coming up behind her. His hand found its familiar place on her lower back. "Thank you. Are you happy, love?" The question hung in the air between them. Raquel thought about happiness. How it came in different forms. How security and passion weren't always the same thing. How she'd chosen a life that made sense over a life that made her feel, and most days, that was the right choice. "Yes," she said. And it was mostly true. Haejin kissed her temple. "Good. That's all I want." He walked away to take a phone call, his voice dropping into the clipped tones he used for business she didn't ask about. Raquel stood alone in her gallery, surrounded by art and silence and the life she'd built on the ruins of another. She thought about Alvin sometimes. Wondered where he was, if he was okay, if he'd finally let her go. She hoped so. Because some loves are meant to be survived, not sustained. Some people come into your life to teach you what you need, not to give you what you want. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is walk away from someone who loves you when you know that love will never be enough. Her phone buzzed. A text from Simone. "Gallery looks amazing. So proud of you." Raquel smiled, typed back thanks, and turned back to her painting. The storm on the canvas looked less violent in the afternoon light. Almost peaceful. Like something that had already passed. So, what's the lesson here? That love conquers all? No. Love is powerful, but it's not omnipotent. It can't pay rent. Can't erase incompatibility. Can't force someone to choose you when they've already chosen something else. That money buys happiness? Not exactly. It buys comfort, security, options. Whether those translate to fulfillment depends on the person holding the wallet. The real lesson, the one that hurts to learn, is this. Sometimes there are no villains. No evil masterminds or tragic victims. Just people making choices based on their own survival, their own needs, their own understanding of what a good life looks like. Alvin wasn't wrong to love Raquel. But he was wrong to think his love obligated her to return. To think he could sabotage her happiness and call it rescue. To confuse his need to matter with her need to thrive. Raquel wasn't wrong to choose stability over romance. But she was wrong to think her choice absolved her of the pain it caused. To rewrite history as if Alvin had been the only problem. To never acknowledge that she'd traded one cage for another, just with better furniture. And Hagen? He's still out there, building empires on the backs of people who don't ask questions. Still buying love in pieces. Still believing power and devotion are the same thing. 3 people. 3 different versions of happiness. 3 different compromises with reality. In the end, Alvin learned to let go. Not because he stopped loving Raquel, but because he finally loved himself enough to stop burning in the fire of her absence. Raquel learned that safety comes at a cost. That the life she chose was built on foundations she couldn't see, maintained by men she couldn't fully trust. And somewhere, in the back of her mind, she knows, the roses Alvin brought that day weren't just flowers. They were a goodbye she didn't let him say. A love that died with the door still open. A ghost she'll carry in the margins of her perfect new life. If you've ever loved someone who couldn't love you back the way you needed, drop a comment. If you've ever been the person who had to walk away from good enough to find better, share your story. And if you're currently holding on to something you know you need to release, hit subscribe. Because the hardest stories to tell are the ones we live. This is the truth they don't put in fairy tales. Sometimes the dragon wins. Sometimes the princess chooses the tower. And sometimes, the hero's greatest act of love is learning when to stop fighting. Thanks for watching. And remember, knowledge is the only weapon they can't take from you. Even when everything else is gone.